In the dead of night, on April 15th, 1912, the RMS Titanic, the largest and most luxurious ship in the world, was dying. Her distress calls flashing CQD and the new SOS were sent out into the cold, empty expanse of the North Atlantic. Most ships that heard the call were simply too far away to help. The SS Californian, tragically, was close enough to see the Titanic's rockets, but its radio operator was asleep. The fate of 1,500 souls seemed sealed in a coffin of ice and darkness. But one ship, against all odds, was not too far. This isn't the story of the Titanic's catastrophic failure. This is the untold story of its only rescue, a story of a different ship, a smaller, slower, humbler vessel, whose captain and crew would, in the space of 4 hours, perform the single greatest rescue operation in modern maritime history. This is the RMS Carpathia.
Our story begins not on the Titanic, but 58 nautical miles away aboard the RMS Carpathia, a Cunard Line passenger ship. By every measure, she was Titanic's opposite. She was a workhorse, not a palace. Built for emigrants and second-class tourists, she was reliable and steady, but certainly not fast. Her captain was Arthur Rostron, a 43-year-old devout Christian, a man of quiet competence, discipline, and absolute professionalism. The Carpathia was on a routine voyage from New York City to Fiume in the Mediterranean. Her 700 passengers were mostly wealthy Americans escaping the winter, and by midnight, they were all sound asleep. In the ship's wireless room, a single operator, Harold Cottam, was also getting ready for bed. His shift was over, he was tired. In one of history's most critical what-ifs, Cottam decided to keep his headphones on for just a few more minutes while he unlaced his boots. Just before 12:20 a.m., a faint signal crackled in his ears. It was the Titanic. But it wasn't a distress call, not at first. It was a message for a different ship, the Baltic, reporting that it was passing icebergs. Cottam, being helpful, decided to contact the Titanic. He wanted to let them know that a nearby ship, the Californian, was reportedly stopped in the ice, and that the Carpathia was also in the vicinity. He tapped out a simple message. "I say, old man, do you know there are messages for you from the Baltic?" The reply that came back was not routine. It was frantic, desperate, and sharp. "CQD, CQD, SOS. Come at once. We have struck an iceberg. It's a CQD, old man. Our position is 41.46 north, 50.14 west. We are sinking." Cottam was stunned. The Titanic? Sinking? It sounded like a joke. He tapped back, "Shall I tell my captain? Do you require assistance?" The answer was immediate. "Yes, come quick." Cottam, barely dressed, ran from the wireless room. He burst onto the bridge and found the first officer. "Sir," he stammered, "Titanic is in distress. He says he struck an iceberg and is sinking." The first officer, knowing Captain Rostron's strict nature, ordered Cottam to deliver the message himself. Cottam ran to the captain's cabin and pounded on the door. Rostron, woken from sleep, was initially furious at the breach of protocol. "You know you're not supposed to come here," he started. Cottam didn't flinch. "Sir, it's the Titanic. He's sending the distress signal, sinking, struck iceberg." In an instant, Captain Rostron was no longer a sleeping man. He was a commander. He didn't question the message. He didn't doubt. He asked only 3 questions, one after another. "You are certain it is the Titanic?" "Yes, sir." "You are certain of the position?" "Yes, sir." "You are certain it is serious?" "Yes, sir. It is a CQD. He says they are sinking." Rostron, a man of quick prayer, reportedly said a short, silent prayer for guidance. Then he turned to his first officer. His orders were immediate, precise, and total. Turn the ship around. The officer was confused. Turn her? But we are going to turn the ship around, Rostron commanded. Now. He did the math in his head. 58 nautical miles. The Carpathia's top speed was officially 14 knots. That meant a 4-hour journey. 4 hours. To save a dying ship. But there was a terrifying catch. To reach the Titanic, the Carpathia would have to sail at full speed directly into the very same treacherous icefield that had just doomed the unsinkable giant. Rostron was about to gamble his own ship, his own crew, and his own passengers to save strangers in the dark.
On the bridge of the Carpathia, Captain Rostron began one of the most intense, high-stakes preparations imaginable. He called his chief engineer, Alexander Johnston. "Mr. Johnston," Rostron said, "I need every ounce of steam you can give me. We are going to the Titanic." Johnston replied that the ship was only rated for 14 knots. "I need more," Rostron demanded. What happened next was a miracle of engineering and willpower. Rostron ordered the ship's heating and hot water to be cut off for all passenger cabins, diverting every last bit of steam to the engines. The engineering crew, knowing what was at stake, stoked the boilers to their absolute limit, bypassing safety valves and pushing the engines to a point they were never designed to reach. The Carpathia, a 14-knot ship, began to move. She reached 15 knots, then 16, then 17. By 1 a.m., the Carpathia was tearing through the black, icy water at 17.5 knots, a speed she had never before achieved and would never achieve again. The entire vessel vibrated violently, the engines screaming in protest, but she did not break. While the ship raced, Rostron prepared for war. He was not just sailing to the Titanic, he was preparing to receive its survivors. His orders were a masterclass in crisis management. He ordered all gangway doors to be opened, ready to receive people. He had electric lights strung along the ship's side. He ordered cargo nets, ladders, and slings prepared to hoist the weak and injured aboard. He organized 3 separate medical stations in the dining saloons, each with a doctor and his purser to handle injuries, shock, and hypothermia. He ordered his kitchen staff to be awakened. "I want coffee, tea, soup, and brandy ready for at least 1,000 people," he commanded. He ordered his own crew to muster, bringing blankets, pillows, and spare clothes from their own bunks to the saloons. He instructed his officers to prepare the ship's public rooms, the library, the smoking room, as makeshift dormitories. Even the Carpathia's own passengers, awoken by the vibration in the cold, were organized. Dr. Gerda, for example, a physician from the U.S., volunteered her services and began setting up a triage. But the race was not just against the clock, it was against the ice. At 2:45 a.m., the lookouts began to scream, "An iceberg, dead ahead!" Captain Rostron was on the bridge, his face etched in the cold. He had posted lookouts on the bow, on the stern, and on both wings of the bridge. For the next hour and a half, he navigated the Carpathia through a minefield. He personally zigzagged the ship, ordering sharp turns to port, then to starboard, dodging growlers, ice fields, and massive bergs, some towering 200 feet above the water. At one point, First Officer Dean, standing beside Rostron, muttered that the ship was surrounded, that it was madness to continue at this speed. Rostron, never taking his eyes off the darkness, simply replied, "The Titanic is in front of us. We must be getting close." He had placed his faith in God and in the sheer power of his ship's engines.
At 4 a.m., the Carpathia arrived at the Titanic's last known coordinates. Captain Rostron ordered the engines to stop. The ship slid to a halt. The vibrating stopped. An eerie, terrifying silence fell over the crew. They stared into the darkness. There was nothing. No ship, no lights, no thousands of people, just the black, flat, 28-degree water and the ghostly shadows of icebergs. Rostron, his heart sinking, knew what this meant. He ordered his crew to begin firing the company's signal rockets, one every 15 minutes. They exploded in the dark, hoping for an answer. And then, at 4:10 a.m., a lookout shouted, "A light! A green light, sir! Off the starboard bow!" It was a single, tiny flare held aloft by a desperate hand. It was Titanic's lifeboat, too. Rostron ordered the ship to move slowly toward it. As they approached, the first rays of dawn were beginning to break on the horizon, and the light revealed a scene from hell. The ocean was not empty. It was a vast field of debris, wooden planks, and bodies. And bobbing among the wreckage were the lifeboats. Not the glorious, massive ship, but 20 small, scattered boats filled with frozen, shell-shocked people. Lifeboat 2 was the first to be tied up. Its 18 occupants were brought aboard. They were silent, their faces blackened by soot from the Titanic's funnels, their hands frozen. A woman, Elizabeth Allen, was the first survivor to step onto the Carpathia's deck. She saw Captain Rostron waiting. She looked at him, confused, and asked, "The Titanic, is it—" She couldn't finish the question. Rostron, his voice gentle, simply said, "Ma'am, please come inside. We have coffee." As the other lifeboats were found, the scale of the tragedy became clear. Charles Lighthaller, the most senior officer to survive, was hauled up, barely conscious. He reported to Rostron what he knew. The captain asked him, "The ship has gone?" Lighthaller, his voice breaking, just nodded. "Gone, sir. She went down at 2:20 a.m. Rostron now understood. They had not been racing to help the Titanic. They had been racing to find its survivors. If they had been just 30 minutes later, the first people they found in the boats would have already frozen to death. For the next 4 hours, Rostron and his crew worked tirelessly, pulling 705 souls from the sea. They brought up boats holding hysterical women, orphaned children, and men so frozen they couldn't speak. The passengers of the Carpathia gave up their cabins, their clothes, and their food, tending to the survivors with a profound sense of duty. By 8:30 a.m., the last survivor was aboard. The Carpathia was now a floating refugee camp, a morgue, and a hospital. Rostron, seeing the vast field of icebergs now visible in the daylight, was horrified. He realized the danger he had put his own ship through. He held a brief memorial service on deck for the 1,500 lives lost. Then he gave the order. He would not continue to the Mediterranean. He would turn around and take the survivors home. The dark truth was now for the world to learn. The violent shudders that had sealed Titanic's many-beloved fate 7 hours earlier would dominate days of agonizing questioning that reshaped everything about sea travel. The horrifying nightmares that still haunt Titanic survivors would spur improvements in safety regulations. The devastating impact of the catastrophic loss of life would not be in vain. But now, after seeing the vast field of debris and bodies, Rostron knew he had to get the survivors back home, because that's what a captain does.
The American journey back to New York was silent. The ship that had raced across the Atlantic at 17.5 knots now crept back at 10, a floating funeral procession. The news, sent from the Carpathia's radio room, shocked the world. When the Carpathia arrived in New York, she was greeted by 40,000 people waiting in the pouring rain. She wasn't just a ship anymore. She was a symbol. Captain Arthur Rostron and his crew were hailed as international heroes. Rostron was knighted by the King of England
and awarded a Congressional Gold Medal by the United States. He, in turn, insisted that every single member of his crew, from the stokers to the stewards, be recognized for their bravery. The Titanic is remembered for the arrogance of its design, the class-based tragedy of its sinking, and the immense loss of life. But in that dark, cold night, the RMS Carpathia proved that humanity's greatest strength is not in building unsinkable ships, but in the simple, profound courage of those who are willing to sail, full speed, into the darkness just to answer a call for help.